and welcome to Psych Sessions, conversations about teaching and stuff. I'm Eric Landrum, along with Garth Neufeld, your podcast hosts. As the name implies, we center on conversations about teaching, but we often veer into other interesting topics, which is the end stuff. This is episode number 134, where Garth had the opportunity to interview Sue Orsillo from the American Psychological Association in Washington, D.C. Before you hear the interview, please allow me to share some listening tips and some of my favorite moments. Now, Sue Orsillo is the Senior Director of Psychology Education and Training at the American Psychological Association. She started that position in June 2021, and that position is located in the Education Directorate in the Center for Psychology Education. Wow, that's a mouthful, and thank you for listening to the introduction. Now, let me almost in some way start over. This is really interesting because Sue Orsillo, in many ways, has been an educator her entire professional career, but she's new to national education leadership. And what I think is really fascinating about this interview is that, at least for me, I knew about Sue Orsillo coming on board to APA, and I'd seen some emails that she sent and been a part of a tiny bit of correspondence. But it's really interesting to hear this interview that Garth conducts with someone who I essentially don't know. And so it's kind of fascinating to get to know someone through Garth's questions and Sue's answers. And just as an aside, let me say that Garth does a fantastic job asking questions. And Sue is just delightful to get to know in this interview. Let me just give you a couple of highlights because I don't want to delay you in getting to this. Sue starts out mentioning that she's been more of a follower rather than a leader. But as she talks about her past and, her previous stints in her, clinical training and her leadership at Suffolk University for 17 years, I think she's been a leader more than she realizes. Maybe she just hasn't stitched it together. When I listen to it, I kind of hear the thread, but obviously she probably thinks about it differently. It's her career. I appreciated this quote that I wrote down in listening to her interview. It's never been a harder time to be a psychology educator. I think I would agree with her 100% with the challenges that would happen pre-pandemic with talking about evidence-based instructional practices, the threats from online and for-profit. Now online and face-to-face has been blurred after the pandemic and during the pandemic. I don't think we're in the after the pandemic stage, quite frankly. And budgetary woes, the lack of clear assessment outcomes for most of us, it's all a swirl, quite honestly. And so I think she's absolutely right. It's never been a harder time to be a psychology educator, which means support from organizations like APA, the Society for the Teaching of Psychology, Psychi, and others, NITOP, and I'm going to leave some out, and I apologize. Psych Sessions is more important now more than ever. It's, as always, it's really great when our guests share some of their background growing up. Sue is a first-gen college student, and what I appreciated about her story is that some of those experiences that she had about not knowing about a workforce path, not knowing about her options, she actually carried with her into her faculty position. And so she created resources and I believe coursework where she could have a professional pathway for psychology major and some instruction as an academic advisor, as an undergraduate instructor. And so it's really interesting to see that first-gen thread looking out for her own students when she becomes a faculty member. it was fascinating to hear about her clinical work with veterans and the VA vet centers in Boston, and where she got some clinical training there, went off and did her thing, and then actually came back to be employed there a little bit later in her career. It's a wonderful interview. It was so great to get to know her through this venue. Honestly, it makes me want to return back to face-to-face meetings and get some time, in the same room, or, IRL, as the hip people say, in real life. And so I'm really appreciative of the time that Sue spent with Garth. And I hope you enjoy this interview just as much as I did.
I am so excited to be here with our new Senior Director of Psychology Education and Training at the American Psychological Association, Sue Orsillo. Sue, welcome to Psych Sessions.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Did I get your title right? Because it's a lot of words.
Yes, you did.
Okay, good. Well, that means the APA website is up to date. That's perfect.
That is fabulous.
And nobody has given you any more titles or responsibilities since you've been there for the last couple months?
Well, you'll notice that is a very broad title. So we can fit a lot of responsibilities under there.
Awesome. Well, yes. Maybe tell us how long you've been in this position at APA. Maybe tell us where this fits in, because, I've been around APA for a while and I still have trouble figuring out where everything fits. So how long have you been there for, and where do you fit?
Absolutely. Yes. No, I am certainly. So I've been at APA since June. So not very long. And I certainly am still trying to figure out where the pieces all fit together. But in general, I fall under that large umbrella of the Education Directorate. And within there, actually, there's been a little bit of shuffling even within there. So my piece of that umbrella is the Center for Psychology Education. And currently in my portfolio, basically, I work with high school and college level psychology. So working with teachers, educators, students sort of in that domain. And I do a few odds and ends also with sort of, there are some other things I manage as well, but primarily the work that I do is with high school and college, pre-college and college.
Right. So on the pie chart of your responsibility, maybe some of the acronyms that we know, like TOPS and CABE, how does that kind of break down for you in your workload?
I would say almost half and half my time is between sort of TOPS and all of their related work and CABE and their related work. I came to APA at a very exciting moment where we're currently working on 3 different policy documents across that high school through college piece as well. So in addition to certainly supporting those committees, the TOPS and CABE committees, where we are pretty far along with the next revision of the national standards for high school psychology curricula. And we're in the middle of revising the guidelines. And we also have a group that's working on a revision of the quality principles, which is also a college document that sort of connects. I will say it's lesser known to many people, but very important also to kind of support that guidelines document. So lots of policy work happening too.
So much policy work. So what was it? Did you know what you were getting yourself into in June when you took that job, that all this stuff was going on?
Absolutely not. It's incredibly exciting to me. It was just really a crazy life decision to, leave my position. So I'm came from a 4-year college and university. I have taught in academics for 23-ish years. As a full professor with tenure, I assumed I would retire where I was currently working. And, I wasn't on the job market. And then along came this sort of interesting position at APA. And I just thought to myself, it would be kind of exciting to have a broader impact, to get involved. I've been a member of APA my whole career, but I haven't been. And, a lot of your listeners probably, know, like, who is this Sue Orsillo? Where has she been? I've been very involved in educating undergraduates and doctoral students. but I haven't been, a big part of APA. I've been sort of a follower and not a leader within APA until now, where I really, I felt like I've done a lot in my career, as an educator, and I wanted to really move to this other level and get involved at a more, at a more national level. So it's been super exciting. I certainly thought I knew what it was going to be like to be here. It's completely different, but incredibly exciting. I mean, every day, every hour, I'm almost working on a different project, and they feel so meaningful and important. And so I'm really thrilled to be in the position.
Well, I hope we can get into your background a little bit so we can get to know kind of where you came from and all that. But what was your experience? What were your experiences with APA prior to working for them? So I just think about myself. I never thought coming out of graduate school or starting to teach at a community college that I would have any role of service through APA. And then somebody extended me an invitation to a committee or some task force or whatever. Did you have any of that going on in your career before?
I mean, that's a great question. I will say that probably most of the sort of organizational service that I did was not within APA before. So I was certainly, kind of, again, a follower of APA. I used the guidelines. Yeah. I, drew from APA. I was involved, again, a lot with the accreditation side of education as well, because as I said, I also worked with doctoral students in my career. But no, I was not, so yeah, all of these acronyms that are very familiar to your listeners were much less familiar to me. So it's funny, I feel incredibly experienced as an educator and brand new in some ways, to the APA side of things. Yeah.
So I never thought about this before, but coming into this group, because you've had like a lot of FaceTime with a lot of my colleagues, my national colleagues, and but you probably knew who some of them were prior to meeting them and now working so closely with them because you'd seen their names on the guidelines and those kinds of things and probably read some of the things that they've written. So.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, no, absolutely. But right. It was a very one-way relationship. And it is funny for me because in some ways, I'm senior in my career, but I'm junior to APA, or to the APA, to the folks at APA. So it really is, it's a whole new sort of professional whole new group of professionals that I'm kind of connecting with and relating to, which is exciting. It's kind of keeps me, it stops me from kind of like resting in my, in my, whatever the work I've done to date and really challenges me to sort of, kind of whatever, show what I can do in this domain.
Yeah. Well, I'll just say from somebody who's been a part of this work with you since June, you hit the ground running and you got caught up really quickly to what was going on. And I can't imagine it. So I can't imagine the hours you logged to be able to do that. It was a lot, huh?
It's nice to hear you say that. I'm glad I am projecting that image, but I think that it was really important to me to understand, what's been happening. And there was a gap, I guess I was offered the job at APA back in February, and I didn't start till June because, I'm an educator and I really needed to wrap up my time at Suffolk University where I was before. I was there 17 years. So it was like, I needed to give them some significant notice. So I really, but I recognized that there was a bit of a gap, there wasn't somebody in that role in between the time I accepted the position, the time I came. So I really felt like I owed it to, the amazing people who are investing their time and energy into CABE and into TOPS and into these, policy documents to kind of get up to speed very quickly and make sure I move things forward. Yeah.
So, and this might be putting you on the spot, and we love to do that here at Site Sessions. So no, but I don't know if we've worked together long enough I know that you're a good leader, but I can't figure out exactly what your strengths are, what you see your strengths are. Because there's so many different styles of leadership, right? So, and I'm sure it differs based on context, but in your position, you are, you have a lot of things under your responsibility. So what would you consider kind of some like a good leadership quality that you've brought to APA or that you kind of realized through these few months?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I will say again, it's a very different role. I've been in leadership positions before. And so I definitely felt like I kind of knew myself as a leader. And I would say like some of my strengths are, that I would have said before coming in is that, I think I like creating vision. I like creating vision with a team. I like to really understand how everyone contributes and sort of the unique strengths and pieces that people bring to the table. And I like to try to get people excited about working on things together and inspired and all of those things. And I think that I feel like I've had some time to sort of grow that. What's really interesting in this position is that, it's much more collaborative. I mean, I feel like it's obviously collaborative to be part of a faculty and to work with a group that way. But here, I'm kind of the liaison really between APA and this group of professionals, and really trying to think about like, when do I use my voice as a psychologist with experience, and when do I step back and sort of support, the voices of people who have incredible experience and expertise within APA and sort of negotiating that role. But I think that I like what I've learned about myself is I think I'm a good listener. I think I'm, able to work with people who are very diverse in terms of their backgrounds and their perspectives and their experiences. And I think it's really important for a leader to earn trust and to really, not walk in and lead from the start, to really, understand like what they're walking into and understand like where they fit into an already existing system. So that's maybe a part of leadership that I think I have those traits and characteristics, but I didn't need to call on them as much in my other roles as I do in this current role.
The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by Macmillan Learning Psychology. Achieve for Psychology is Macmillan's new learning platform coming in 2022. Achieve sets a whole new standard for integrating assessments, activities, and analytics into your teaching. Available exclusively in Achieve are enhanced analytics to help you better understand your students and their learning. Macmillan's new insights offer customizable and actionable snapshots with high-level data on student performance and behavior, helping you focus on lectures and assignments to improve student outcomes. Tell us what you think. See a preview and get involved at macmillanlearning.com/psych sessions. Macmillan's Achieve for Psychology, engaging every student, supporting every instructor, setting the new standard for teaching and learning.
Yeah, well, I'll add one thing. I think that you're really good. You're driving behind the scenes a lot. You're driving things forward. And so it's as a lot of faculty who volunteer their time to do these tasks. They sometimes the burden becomes a lot. And it's so nice to have somebody and a group of people actually at APA that we work with who are driving vision forward so that there is progress outside of meetings and stuff. So that's been really, really helpful. And so anyway, I've appreciated that on the Intro Psych Initiative stuff. So thanks.
Absolutely. And, I think we're really trying to, I understand what you are all, I understand the stressors that you're all under. I think it is never been a harder time to be an educator. The demands on psychology teachers and faculty members are just incredible. And so, I think I'm very sensitive to how do I use people's expertise, but like, this is my job. Like, it's my full-time job. For other people, it's their service, and so I do want to make sure that I'm doing all I can in between and behind the scenes to sort of move the work forward.
Well, good. Okay. Before we get into your backstory, I do have one more question that occurs to me, and that is, what is the experience working with my high school colleagues who I've worked with lots through TOPS and through the AP reading and those kinds of things, and the college folks? Does anything strike you that you can say on a recorded line?
I enjoy all my
all your children. Yes.
Children,
I'll say it.
It has been so incredibly exciting and inspiring to get to know the high school teachers, because that's not a group who I've worked really closely with before. I feel the same way about the college folks I work with as well. But I think for me, it's been more eye-opening to understand how incredibly important and hardworking the high school teachers are. And I love that. I love that addition to my job that I didn't really have before.
This reminds me of, I saw something on Twitter, and this might be a terrible story because I can't remember the source and I can't remember exactly what it was, but let's go with it. So I remember like somebody in college that I follow on Twitter, a faculty member, was talking about they were doing something pedagogically related, but they were kind of surveying high school teachers. And they said, we're pretty good at this stuff, but these high school teachers are fire. Like, oh my gosh, the level of competence in those high school teachers is crazy. It's really inspiring. Sue Franz once told me that the AP reading would be the best professional. She tells everybody this would be the best professional development that I ever did. It is. If you can stomach the reading, it's the best professional development ever. Yeah. So anyway,
I encourage, everyone who teaches, everyone who doesn't connect with high school psychology really should, because I've gone to a few of their webinars and listened to master teachers. The activities, and they really have what many of us are trying to catch up and sort of get the science of learning into our teaching, and to really think about that. They just have great experience with that, and they're working with such a challenging population. There's so much going on in that age group. There's so many other pieces. So that's been a very fun addition to my work.
Now, they do teach, and I'm in the intro psych world, and so they teach that course so well. But I also wonder, like, what are those things that make so many of those teachers, hundreds of them that I see at the AP reading every year, like, teach so well? Is it the training? Is it that these systems are in place? Is it that they have these kind of resources? Is it that they're organized? I don't know. Do you have a sense?
I'm sure there's not one way, there's not like one reason for all teachers, but what I've been most impressed with, because we do talk a lot about this on the high school side of things, is there's not, most states don't have credentialing for high school teachers. Every single time we do a professional development, we get someone on there in the chat who's like, I'm an art teacher. I've never taught psychology before, and I'm teaching it this semester, but they're there. They're at an APA webinar on a Saturday, on the weekend. They're looking at our resources, they're looking at our lesson plans, they're reaching out to teachers. And so I think people get there from different places, but I've just seen a lot of just motivation from teachers who recognize that they come in with different levels of preparation. Maybe they were only teaching history, and that they at least that the ones that we see and the ones that you probably see at AP, are the ones who've really taken it upon themselves to develop professionally wherever they are. I also work with a lot of experienced teachers who are still trying to grow and think about like how to bring more diversity into their teaching, or thinking about, new ways to capture. So that is very impressive to me. We're trying to do some advocacy around, teacher prep, but in the meantime, a lot of the folks that we see are ones who are like scratching and clawing to get the best for their students, which is really inspiring.
Yeah, I don't want this to be controversial, but I'll say it anyway.
The Psych Sessions podcast is sponsored by Hawks Learning. Are you looking for more affordable, quality materials for your intro psych students? Check out Hawks Learning's mastery-based courseware and texts. These materials introduce foundational psychology and research concepts that inspire students of all majors to think more critically about the world around them. Take advantage of software features designed with student learning in mind, like customizable lessons that allow you to add videos, Google Slides, forms, and more to illustrate concepts and deepen understanding. Explore these materials, available to students for as low as $43, alongside free chapter projects and example videos at www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions. Again, that's www.hawkslearning.com/psych sessions.
Many of us believe that intro psych is perhaps the hardest undergraduate course to teach in psychology. There's just so many demands. There's so many topics. And when I came out of my graduate work, I would say that there were maybe out of those 16 chapters in an intro book. And shout out to the organizational industry IO folks because they never get into those 16 chapters. But I know that there are some advocates out there for it. But those 17 topic areas plus, really, I came out with maybe expertise in 2.
Yeah.
Right. And so I wonder how different I was when I got my first intro psych course than the art teacher. Obviously there are some differences. I had some coursework in psychology and those kinds of things, but really by the time I got my graduate degree and then was teaching my first course, I think the thing that works for high school teachers, this is just me talking, people can disagree. I think the thing that works is they have to take those people who literally don't know anything about it, and they have to build systems that get them up to par so that they can teach the course in at least an adequate way for students.
Right.
And then if it's an AP Psych course, there is their students' results is essentially feedback to them about were they able to pull it off, right? So anyway, these systems, absolutely. But in intro psych at the college level, we don't have these systems. We don't have the training. And that's, I think, a first step. And we're not trying to be prescriptive about anything, academic freedom and all that. But we are trying to build systems. And it seems to me that the high school folks are a little ahead of us on it.
That's a great point, right? I mean, they've got models. They've sort of, by necessity, had to learn that and had to kind of bring these resources together. And there's probably more of a community. I know that is a lot of what you and Reagan and the other folks from IPI have been working on, is trying to grow a community of intro psych professors, or teachers. But yeah, I mean, I think the high school teachers have that community, and they've used it. They've really used it to support the development of resources, to point people to different directions to help with those systems. We definitely could take a lesson from that, I think, in terms of thinking about intro psych at the college level.
Yeah. Well, hopefully this is a first step, the intro psych initiative work. And by the way, if people don't know what we're talking about, apa.org /IPI. By the way, I've been saying / for years, and I think that the common one we use is actually a /. So anyway, somebody corrected me recently, and my world has changed. So /. And if I'm wrong, I don't know. Then try a /.
I think you're right. I think you're right about the /.
Oh, / is so much easier to say. Okay. So Sue, where do you hail from? Where were you born and raised? And let's get into your backstory a little bit.
Yeah. So I hail from Massachusetts. I was born and raised in Massachusetts, and hadn't been there, and then was back there. So started out there, went to school in Albany, New York, and then headed out to Oklahoma, actually Stillwater, Oklahoma, for my first academic job, and made my way back to the East Coast, taught in Boston for a while, and now I'm in DC. Yeah.
Okay. So
I'm a mass person.
That's okay. So that let me slow this down for a second. Were you in Massachusetts? Were you city or small
suburbs? I was originally I grew up in the suburbs.
Okay. Yeah. And at what point did you get interested in? Were you interested in academics as a student?
No.
Oh, really?
So I'll start. So I am a first generation college student in my family.
Yep.
So certainly didn't have a dream of being a professor when I was a kid. Absolutely not. And I've over the years, a lot of the teaching I've done at the college level are around sort of career-oriented sort of courses, so like a professional development course, an internship course, and so on. We can talk about that if we have time. But a lot of it came from like my path felt so random, I took a high school psychology course. They did have that in my high school. And I thought, well, that's kind of cool. Let me major in that. But still really had no sort of vision of like, where is this taking me? What's the path? Like so many psychology majors, I had no idea that what was available to me, the different areas of psychology. I was just kind of like tripping along.
Yep, me too. Uh-huh.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, it's the story of most of us, I think. Yep. And then I actually had a medical issue come up my senior year of college where I had to take a leave of absence. And then I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do now? When I came back, I didn't want to graduate off cycle. And one of my professors in a course that I thought was really interesting, which was abnormal psychology, bad name, we got to work on changing that. But that course, I was like, well, what should I do? And he was like, well, you could do some research in my lab if you want. You could be a research assistant. And, that was the opening of a door to me, of just sort of research, has been a passion of mine for most of my career. That sort of opened doors for me to be able to learn about graduate school, to apply to graduate school. Still, I never thought I really wanted to be a professor. I didn't teach, like most of us in my generation, no teaching experience during grad school. It wasn't until, I'd say like later in my career, I'm a clinical psychologist where I was like, I'm very interested in clinical psychology. I love doing clinical work. And that is not what I want to do full time. Like I want something that will allow me to do some research. And I was excited about the idea of teaching, even though I didn't teach my first course till I was a professor at Oklahoma State University.
Wow.
So apologies to my students out there.
So was this abnormal psych instructor by the way, do we know what that class should be called now?
It's hard to know. I mean, the Journal of Abnormal is changing their name, but I think people are still.
What are they changing it to?
That's a great question. I knew as it was coming off my tongue, I thought to myself,
that's fine. That's fine. We'll look into it.
Maybe with psychopathology in there or clinical. Yeah.
I saw something about it, but I don't remember what it was.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I've had conversations with folks in different departments. There's always this idea about like, if we change it in our department and, our students want to go to grad school, will they know what it is? And,
totally.
So I feel like places are struggling to try to figure out, because it's not just about a name. There's a lot of ideas that fall under abnormal psychology and clinical psychology that are problematic and being questioned these days. So that's a long answer to saying, I don't know.
Well, I do think that this is something that's on people's radar. I see it on social media. Definitely. I see it in the STP Facebook group. And so I think it's a worthy conversation for institutions to have and to figure out with, for us at a community college, to figure out what our 4-year local universities are going to do with that. I actually think it would be fine. It's not a perfect system by any means, but there are people on the other end of the phone. So I think they would understand if we change that name. But anyway, so this instructor from the abnormal psych course, is this the instructor did you have this instructor before you were in the research lab?
So I guess he was also maybe my advisor. So I took abnormal psychology with him. I was like, oh, that's a really cool course. I love this. He was also my academic advisor. And, it was sort of like I had finished my classes mostly, but I had 1 or 2 to take and I needed more credit. And I was like, what should I do? And he was like, well, we are looking for research assistants. You could do that for academic credit. Do you want to give it a try? And I was like, sure, I'll do that.
Okay. So what was it about this person that you, this instructor that you were like, because it's not just the research lab, right? It's something about the instructor too, and the invitation. And so what was it? And do any other instructors from, or teachers from even earlier than that kind of stick out to you as like important people, mentors for you?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think that, what was actually really challenging for me is this academic person was my mentor, psychologist. And so the work I did with him was around neuropsychology, which was not my passion, but actually stayed in his lab far longer than I probably should have for like the interest that I had, just because, he had taken an interest in me. I think he, at the time, I mean, even now, obviously it's very difficult to be a first generation college student, but certainly when I was in college, like, I didn't even know there was a name for that. Right. I was like, I just don't know. Everyone else seems to understand this system and I don't know anything about it. And I think it just was his willingness to, to listen to me, to encourage me, to sort of explain options to me, was even more so than sort of the content of the work that we were doing. It was just incredibly helpful to me, his mentorship in that way.
Did you know at the time that this would be a valuable skill moving forward for you? Like what you were gaining in there?
No.
Okay.
No.
And what was it a valuable skill that you carried forward?
I mean,
it was the research piece, right?
Well, the research piece, but also the sort of being accessible to students and normalizing the mentorship piece was incredibly important to me in my career and really helped me to one, decide that mentorship was going to be a really important part of my job, moving forward, that was so meaningful to me and helped me so much that I definitely wanted to do that, for other students. And, this sort of, real validation that like being confused and not knowing about the possible options, like is a perfectly okay, reasonable, expected place to be. Like, I think that is something that I carried forward my whole career, really.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that you had the kind of the insight to know that you didn't know. Cause I was the kind of first generation student who didn't know I didn't know. Right. So, so for you to be able to identify, like, there's something I don't get here and I need to sort it out. I mean, there's probably like a curiosity or inquisitiveness in you that wants to go find the answers to things you don't know. Would that be accurate?
I think that's probably true. I'm going to say also maybe driven by a little bit of social anxiety and imposter syndrome. So like both feeling like, ooh, like other people seem to know something I don't know, but right. I think certainly, and one thing, I mean, my dad, again, graduated from high school and that was it. But I think he definitely did instill in me, both of my parents, but my dad more so, like this sort of curiosity and like, the idea of like, when you're facing something that is like confusing or you don't know, that you could either pull back and avoid, which would maybe be my first impulse out of anxiety, and that moving into it, like leaning into it is gonna, make life interesting and exciting. So
all right,
notice I'm anxious and lean forward.
No, that's really good. That's a nice way to talk to students about it too. So your folks, let's just talk about them for a moment. What did they do for work?
My dad was like in construction in his early career, and then, sort of in management of like senior housing and, housing, that kind of thing. Uh-huh. My mom was a homemaker.
Okay.
Stay at home. Yep.
Absolutely. And because their lives were different than your life, was college something that they were, knowledgeable about or at least the benefit of it for you? This is Eric's favorite question. For them, was it like, we've done this so that you can go to college, or was it your choice?
It was definitely my choice. I mean, right. I've heard that kind of like that sometimes people feel like guilty, like your parents. I didn't get that sense. But I also, it was my choice, but it didn't really feel like it did feel like it was an expected route, but I was okay with it. I didn't feel like the burden of them not having that opportunity. I was like, I think they raised me to be pretty confident academically, and I was doing okay with that until I got to maybe the end of college, and certainly in grad school, where I was like, there's a lot of scaffolding I didn't realize I didn't have.
Well, one of the things that strikes me is when you had to take a break from college in your senior year, Did that
Right.
give you, I'm sure that wasn't what you wanted to do at all, but did that time away and then you come back and go into the research lab?
Right.
What did that do for you in terms of reflecting on what you want to do? Because you said something that, my goodness, I guess I probably knew this as a senior in college, but you said that you knew that this lab was not the direction that you wanted to go in. I mean,
Right,
that is just, that's pretty sophisticated for, a 21, 22-year-old
Yeah,
just to
yeah.
know that. So what was it like to have that year off? And by the way, you're talking to somebody who took a gap year after high school. So,
Right,
but yeah.
right. Yeah. I mean, I think it's great to have a year off. I'm in sort of, at every point of at every choice point, the choices that young adults have to make that, can have an impact on their life trajectory is terrifying to me. So I think time off is a good thing. I mean, I think for sure, it was, the only time I wasn't in school, and it made me definitely recognize that I love learning and thinking and, being in school. So I think, I don't remember ever debating about do I want to jump into the workforce right away and not sort of move forward with schooling, but certainly that time off, I missed being a student.
Yeah.
I definitely loved that part of my career, which is why I stayed.
Well, so you must have applied for a number of programs and not any neuro programs, right?
Well, right. So actually, yes and no. No,
Okay.
I have not. The story gets even my indebtedness to this mentor and attachment to this mentor. So I ended up going to grad school where I went to undergraduate, and I stayed in my mentor's lab as a grad student for really 2.5 years before I switched out of his lab. So yes.
Wow. And that was in New York?
Yeah. It's University at Albany.
Albany.
Yeah.
Okay.
Albany.
So
Yes.
then you graduate with a master's degree in, or
I stayed through. It was a PhD 5-year PhD clinical program. Yep. Mm-hmm. Yep.
Oh, I see. And you just stayed in his lab for some of that. I know,
which really never happens ever, but I did. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
But you wanted to do clinical. And did you know you wanted to do clinical there? Did you liked it there?
Yeah, I think for sure, my kind of affinity for the abnormal psych course. And then as I started taking grad courses, I thought, this is really interesting to me. Probably because my own anxiety, I studied anxiety for a long time.
Yeah.
Something I could I was like, wow, there's something really valuable about understanding this for me.
Okay. So I come out of counseling background. So where were you? Where did you do your practicums, internships, and where did you get that kind of experience?
Yeah. So, I did one college counseling sort of practicum experience. But what was I used to tell this story to my grad students for our sort of big practicum placement, because back in the day, we only did 2 years of clinical prac. Now clinical students are really feeling like they have to accumulate so many hours. But they had a ranking form. And what I ranked last was the vet center, because I was terrified to work with veterans. And of course, that is where my program sent me. And it became for me, then it was a passion. Actually I did my internship at the National Center for PTSD at the Boston VA, stayed on for a postdoc. Left there, came back there for a job for a while. It just was really an incredible experience working with veterans.
Okay. I have an association. It might miss totally, but I just read the book, The Body Keeps the Score. Have you read this book?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Now, did that have a lot of overlap in the Boston area? I think that his work was somewhere out there anyway.
Yes. Yep. There's a lot of trauma and PTSD folks in the Boston area.
Okay.
In the Boston VA itself, there's actually 2 different national centers for PTSD. There's the Women's Health Sciences Division and the Behavioral Sciences Division. So just a lot of people there. And then, Bessa Vanderkolk's work, Judy Herman and the Cambridge Health group.
Wow.
There was a lot of folks doing trauma work in that area. Although I was mostly, like I said, the veteran, working with veterans was my path into that, into PTSD. And so that was mostly who I worked with in that area.
What did you take away from that experience of working with veterans?
Oh my gosh, it was the hardest and the best thing because they were brutally frank and honest. They were incredibly resilient. I mean, to have gone through the kinds of traumatic events they went through and to still be there and to be in therapy and be like, I want life to be different. I just found that just incredibly inspiring and exciting, difficult. They would call me out on, there was no, I mean, not every veteran is the same, but, they gave me such a great learning experience as an early clinician. And then, really, I think I promised them I would take that learning and pay it forward. Wow. It's just really, it just teaches you so much about the resilience of humans. And
Yeah. So once you once you finished your PhD, what was the next step after that?
Yep. So I finished up my internship. I stayed at the National Center and did a postdoc there in mostly a research position, but with a little bit of clinical work. And then, I cast my net throughout the U.S. to look for an academic tenure track position, which took me out to Stillwater, Oklahoma.
Stillwater, Oklahoma. Now, I've driven through Oklahoma, but I don't think I've been there, but I can imagine it. So where are we from, like Oklahoma City? We're Stillwater or Tulsa or whatever.
Yeah, it's sort of between Tulsa and Oklahoma City. I mean, we would, and I should say my first tenure track position, I moved out there with a 2-month-old. And my family's from Massachusetts. My husband's family's from New York. So we moved out there knowing no one. And we were about an hour away from Oklahoma City. So we would take the big drive to Target. That was kind of a big, exciting trip to drive an hour to Oklahoma City to go to Target. So it is, it is a pretty, there's the university, and that is, it's not even really a college town. There's a lot of the students do go back to their, communities on the weekend. It doesn't have that same sort of, it may now. This was 25 years ago or so, but yeah.
How many years were you in Oklahoma? In Oklahoma.
4 years.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm trying to figure out what year the Oklahoma City bombing was. Was that any time around there?
Yes, it was. It was in between the time I took the position and moved out there.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
That must have been really interesting.
It was, again, like talk about trauma, right? It was such a interesting time. And there were also the years that we were there were some pretty large tornadoes that came through that also wrecked some significant damage. So it was an experience.
I've been to the memorial there at Oklahoma at the spot of the Oklahoma City bombing. It is so beautiful. So I highly recommend it to anyone. I went at night, and oh my gosh, it's just such an experience. They light it all up at night, and fascinating.
Right. I haven't been there. I haven't been back since we left. So
it's worth it. So if you're ever in at a conference or something in Oklahoma City, go check it out. Sure. So you're kind of going. One of the things I'm trying to get to here that I haven't quite figured out yet is how did you balance your clinical work, your research, and your teaching at that time? So with that first kind of job.
At that first job, I would say not very well.
But you were doing all three?
I was doing all three for sure. Absolutely. And again, teaching for the first time. I hadn't even TA'd a course before I taught my own course. That was, and I would say, obviously teaching my doc students where we had, 5, 6, 7 students in a class versus my undergrad students where it was, large lecture hall, 150 type. I definitely was trial by fire to try to get up to speed, to think about that. But, to me, I don't know, they didn't. I think it's tough to balance, and something that I've really thought a lot about. I think coming to this current position I have at APA from a different background where really my teaching has always been split. I've always been teaching both grad and undergrad. I feel like I realize like there's some, there's a real need to make sure that there's so many different educators of psychology, high school, community college, 4-year schools, large schools, small schools that have, doctoral programs, schools where grad students are teaching, and, really thinking about the needs of those different. I feel like one thing I really bring to the table is having pretty strong sense about those different roles and the different challenges that come up in not all of them, but in teaching in some of those contexts.
Yeah. What was your clinical work in Oklahoma? Was it a private practice or?
No. So my research as a clinical psychologist, my research has been clinically focused. So really, over the course of my career, I would say mostly my work has been around like developing what we call acceptance-based behavior therapy, which is an approach that takes acceptance and mindfulness and integrates in sort of traditional cognitive behavioral approaches to treat anxiety.
Okay.
So it didn't feel right. So it fit, and I did a lot of my research was also on training therapists and thinking about like that really fit well with me for teaching, like using the same, methods, because same thing, we could say the same thing about teaching therapists. A lot of our, CE is not, we don't always use our best and best practices as a teacher and educator in teaching those kinds of things as well. So I guess as my career was going on, I think things were coming together more, like my roles were definitely more consolidating across those three areas.
Yeah, I think we probably do that I think it's probably natural. We also do it for a bit of survival, right? Because it's not, and by the way, you had a 2-month-old while all this was going on. So yeah. So 4 years you moved from Oklahoma to
back to Boston.
Okay. Yeah, back to Boston.
And actually back to the National Center. So where I had done my internship and postdoc, I went back there in a staff position for a couple of years. And that's when I really was like, and I did training there. I was training practicum students. I was training interns. We had a postdoc program, but I absolutely missed the classroom. And so I only stayed in that position for a couple of years before I took my most recent job at Suffolk.
Suffolk is where?
That's in Boston. Yeah. Yep.
Okay. So you
Suffolk
stayed
University.
after that stint in Oklahoma, you stayed close to home after that.
I did.
Okay.
Yes,
Until recently.
Till my kids flew the nest. And,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay. So talk to us about Suffolk. You got hired there, and is it a large university? How many people were in the department?
It is. I mean, so my department's a very bizarre department at Suffolk University. So it's mostly a undergraduate with masters. I think there's maybe like 7,000 total students, maybe like 5,000 undergraduates. And they had a law school. They have a law school and a business school, and then one PhD program, which was in the psychology department. So very, very, and I guess as I was leaving, we only had a clinical PhD program, and then we added a developmental program. So our faculty size was like around like 12-ish, 13 in the psych department.
Okay.
Yeah. But that was what I loved about Suffolk was I had the PhD program, but everyone taught undergraduates, and teaching undergraduates well and mentoring them well was critically important. So I know, sometimes you hear it at places that have PhD programs that, the doctoral students get more attention than the undergrads. That was definitely not, part of Suffolk's sort of DNA was the undergraduate students. And so
what was it about
what
was it about the DNA of that institution that they valued teaching? Like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
Is it a long tradition? I
think a long tradition.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think a long tradition. I mean, they were really started as I think they started as a law school, and they started because they were the first law school that would accept women, that would accept, people of color into the program. And so they have and then for a long time, they were really a commuter school, a lot of first generation college students. I mean, now they've moved a bit from that, but their mission really is to serve, to serve students. And they have kind of a strong sort of, it's, they support liberal arts education, but they're also they've always been very focused on workforce development as well. And really, that we owe students, some help in getting them launched in a career. So all of that really spoke to, you heard my history, that really kind of, sings to me personally.
Yeah. Did you take on any administrative position while you were there? And you did all that, huh?
I had them all. Yeah. So super exciting. I think I did a lot of that was really where I did most of my work in terms of really thinking about undergraduate programs. So, I did served as the DCT and the associate DCT for the clinical program, but also the director of undergrad studies and psychiatry advisor. And I really did a lot of work around developing sort of a kind of a professional development pathway for students, like starting in the sophomore year. Because my story is I taught the psychology internship class, which at the time was mostly seniors, and no one knew anything about what they were going to do after they graduated. And I was like, this is completely unacceptable. And over time, really, was able to make some curriculum changes, with my department, obviously. But that was where I spent a lot of time really thinking about that, bringing the guidelines in. I shared the guidelines with students in their sophomore year class. Their senior portfolio was sort of using the guidelines and sort of talking, bringing in artifacts of their education where they develop those, that knowledge and skill. And so that's where I really, over the 17 years I was at Suffolk, that's where I really got to kind of develop my thinking in that area.
I heard you say one thing that I haven't heard you say before, which is like this, that something was unacceptable. Do you sometimes see those things and you're like, that I need to solve that problem? Is that how you kind of operate?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think, again, I made reference to my kids who, flew the nest. And I know for us, like what going to college, like it is not cheap. It is not like it's an investment in money and time. And I was like, these parents are sending their kids to us, or these kids are like scraping up money to come, like that kind of thing is right. So I was like, we need really, this is a problem that I thought was unacceptable, that we need to make sure they have opportunities.
It sounds like when you identify problems, it's probably fairly energizing to you as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
And drives. Yeah. So, okay. So that must have been hard to leave your university after 17 years.
So hard. Yeah. Truly, like I really never, ever in a million years would have imagined it. I'm sure. I feel like certainly the pandemic played a role, but I think also just really seeing the challenges that we're facing, that educators are facing and the students are facing, and thinking like, right. So I feel like I dug in, I solved some problems at our department level, but thinking, well, other people are doing this like nationally, and can I be involved in sort of this bigger thing? So truly, again, I certainly wasn't on the job market, never thought I would left, but this, ad came across, somebody forwarded it to me, and I was like, that seems really interesting.
Oh, okay. So was part of it, I've solved some of these problems or worked towards solving some of these problems at this level. Can I do this at a bigger level?
Yeah, absolutely.
Or can I contribute at a bigger level?
Yeah, I feel, I feel cool. Like I'm not done, not washed up yet. I've got a good chunk of, time left. Yeah. Like, how can I invest this time? I feel like, and again, I love my work as a clinician, as a researcher, but I feel like I've done a lot of things I wanted to do in those domains. And I was sort of like, this is really what's calling me to kind of, think about how to think about this in a broader way than I had been in my department life. Yeah.
So does that, what's your relationship where's your relationship at with your former institution? Then your ties are cut then? Is that how that works?
That's an excellent question, right? I found out after the fact that sometimes people will take a leave of absence. I did not do that. I'm still, I guess I have a appointment there, like I forget what my title is, research, clinical something or other. I still have a couple doctoral students who are finishing up, and of course I love my colleagues there, and know that. So I have a non-tenure track appointment, but I'm not teaching. I'm just sort of finishing up, commitments that I made to students, committees I was on, that kind of thing.
Right. Yeah, so I'm guessing that you haven't officially moved because you took this job during the pandemic, but will you move?
I have moved, actually.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah. Again, what a crazy time we're in, right? This pandemic. So when I took the position, it was you need to be in Washington, D.C. because this will pass and we'll all be back in the building. This just shows you, even though I've only been in my job for such a short time, like the in pandemic years, it's so much longer. So, which was, and again, I mean, I turned to my, spouse and partner who, when I first applied for my academic job and I said, can we go somewhere? And he jokingly said, anywhere but Oklahoma. And then on that interview, I called him and I was like, were you kidding when you said Oklahoma? It's because, so he has been so supportive of my career. And I was like, well, how are you feeling about Washington, D.C.? Like, how are you feeling about selling our house and pulling up our roots? And so, again, like you can tell by now, I'm sort of I'm motivated by change and, I see it as a challenge, but so we first, when I took the job, I thought for sure I'd be in the building. Now I am here. So I moved to DC in September.
Wow.
I have yet to be in the building of APA, but I am here in the DC area.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. And just to bring something full circle, you said that you're kind of motivated by challenge or change, I think you said. But going back, I think that this is one of those situations again, where you can either avoid or step into it, and you've trained yourself to step into it.
Absolutely.
Which is pretty cool. So interesting. Are you all in a suburb or are you right in the city?
We are right in the city. Yeah. I decided, again, like change. So it was like, we've been in the suburbs, so I'm in a condo in the West End, which is sandwiched sort of between Georgetown, DuPont, Foggy Bottom. And it feels a little, honestly, I work very, very hard during the week, but the weekends still almost feel like a vacation because we're just running around, still really trying to.
Oh, that's so neat.
Know the area, and yeah.
I mean, there is it's endless the things to see there, isn't it?
So much. I mean, we feel almost guilty. Someone was asking me the other day about which museums and monuments we've been to, and we're like, I haven't been to a lot of them yet because those I had visited as a visitor to DC.
Yes.
But the punch list is long of the things to check out.
I haven't been to the Space Needle yet, and I've been in Seattle for like close to 15 years. So people roll their eyes at me when they when I say that. Sue, does anything else? Is there anything else that you want to share? Well, before we kind of finish up here and get you on to a next meeting, I'm sure.
Yeah, no, I mean, just I'm so grateful to you. I mean, I think that, you've been so supportive of me in my new role and willing to work with me to help bring the IPI work forward. And I just, and thank you for doing this to introduce me to more folks. I'm sure people are like, who the heck is that? Sue Orsillo over at APA. And just to say to anyone who's listening, please reach out. I'd love to get to know you, figure out what you're doing and see how we can support you more at APA. So thank you for the opportunity.
Of course. And welcome to the team. It's so nice to have you doing what you're doing. And I'm sure we will be seeing each other for many years to come. So I look forward to that work. Thanks.
Yes, thanks so much.